missing 13th disciple the church never talked about. For 2 millennia, the story has been the same. Jesus had 12 disciples: Peter, Andrew, James, John. Their names are legendary. They are the foundation of the church. But what if that's not the whole story? What if there was another? A 13th member of the inner circle whose name and story were deliberately scrubbed from the official narrative. We've found suppressed texts and historical breadcrumbs that point to a hidden follower of Christ. A secret disciple whose story could change everything we thought we knew. Section 1. The official story and the crack in the narrative. In Christian tradition, the number 12 is sacred. 12 apostles for the 12 tribes of Israel. It's a perfect, divine symmetry. The Gospels lay out the names: Peter, Andrew, James and John, Philip and Bartholomew, Matthew and Thomas, another James, Simon the Zealot, Thaddeus, and of course, Judas Iscariot. Judas's betrayal and death left a void, breaking that perfect number. So the first thing the apostles did after Jesus' ascension was fill it. The book of Acts tells us they gathered to pick a replacement. The rules were strict. The person had to have been there from the very beginning, from Jesus' baptism all the way to his resurrection. 2 men fit the bill: Joseph Barsabbas and a man named Matthias. They prayed, cast lots, and the lot fell to Matthias. He was officially added to the 11, making the number 12 again. And for most people, that's that. Problem solved, number restored. But the story doesn't just end there. Think about it. If the original 12 were handpicked by Jesus, what does it mean when the next one is chosen by a roll of the dice? Was Matthias really the next apostle, or was he just the first substitute? This little crack in the official story opens the door to a much deeper mystery, one that suggests other, more important figures were quietly pushed aside. Section 2. The investigation following the clues. To find the real 13th disciple, we have to dig outside the officially approved story. Early Christianity wasn't one big, happy family. It was a chaotic explosion of different beliefs, factions, and takes on Jesus' message. It was a war of ideas, and only one version got to write the history books. The losers and their gospels were labeled heresy and systematically erased. It's in those forgotten stories and buried texts that we find our candidates. Our first, and maybe most controversial candidate, wasn't chosen by lots, but claimed he was chosen directly by the risen Christ himself: Paul. You might know him as Saul of Tarsus. He wasn't a follower of Jesus during his life. In fact, he was a hardcore persecutor of the early church. But on the road to Damascus, he had a blinding vision of Jesus, an event so life-changing it turned the church's biggest enemy into its greatest champion. Paul himself is adamant about his authority as an apostle, saying in Galatians that he was called by God, not by any human group. He never made it into the official 12, yet there are 13 books in the New Testament traditionally attributed to him, though modern scholars debate the authorship of several. He did more to shape and spread Christianity than almost anyone. But his claim was always a sore spot. He was an outsider, a latecomer whose authority came from a private, mystical vision, not from walking with Jesus in Galilee. This put him at odds with the original apostles in Jerusalem and exposes the power struggles that were already shaping the church. But there's another candidate, someone who was there from the beginning, a constant presence at Jesus' side, and the very first person named in the Gospels as a witness to the resurrection. Her name is Mary Magdalene. In all 4 Gospels, Mary is a major figure. She was at the cross when most of the men had already run off. She was the first person to get to the empty tomb. But it goes deeper. In John's Gospel, the risen Jesus appears to her first and gives her a message for the other disciples. He tells her, "Go to my brethren and say to them." In that moment, she becomes a messenger to the apostles themselves. For this, early church tradition gave her a powerful title, Apostle to the Apostles. In 2016, Pope Francis officially raised her feast day to the same rank as the other apostles, cementing this ancient honor, though this doesn't formally make her an apostle in Catholic doctrine. So why isn't she on the list? Why was this apostle to the apostles later demoted and, in the Western Church, mislabeled for centuries as a repentant prostitute, a label with zero biblical basis? The clues are in the very texts the Church wanted to get rid of. In 1945, a discovery in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, unearthed a library of lost Christian books, including what we now call the Gnostic Gospels. These texts paint a completely different picture. They include the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Thomas, and the one most important to our investigation, the Gospel of Mary. In the Gospel of Mary, she's not just a follower. She is the disciple Jesus loved most, the one he trusted with his deepest, most secret teachings. The text describes the apostles grieving and afraid after Jesus' departure. Mary steps up, comforts them, and shares the secret revelations she received. But Peter gets jealous and angry. He asks, "Did he really speak with a woman in private and not openly to us? Are we to turn about and all listen to her? Did he prefer her to us?" It's a moment of pure, raw conflict that shows a deep split in the movement, a power struggle between Peter's authority and Mary's spiritual wisdom. And this wasn't the only alternate story. There's the Gospel of Thomas, a collection of 114 secret sayings of Jesus that presents him more as a wisdom teacher than a savior. And then there's the most shocking text of all, the Gospel of Judas. Discovered in the late 1970s but not fully published until 2006, this text flips the story of betrayal on its head. It claims Judas didn't betray Jesus for money, but was the only one who truly understood him. In this version, Jesus asks Judas to betray him to help free his spirit from his physical body. Judas isn't the villain. He's the most loyal disciple tasked with a terrible but necessary job. So what does this all mean? We have multiple figures: Paul, Mary, Thomas, even a redeemed Judas, all presented as disciples with a special, often secret, connection to Jesus. And their stories are all found in texts that were eventually branded as heresy. Which leads to the big question: why would the Church erase them? The motive, in a word? Control. In the first few centuries, Christianity was a mess of competing ideas. Gnostics taught that salvation came from secret knowledge, or gnosis, not from the Church. For the Roman Empire, which eventually adopted Christianity under Emperor Constantine, this was a political mess. An empire needs one unified religion, not a bunch of warring sects. This led to the great church councils, like the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Now, there's a popular myth that this is where the Bible was created, but that's not true. The real point of these councils was to establish orthodoxy, a single approved version of Christianity. Doctrines were standardized, and a hard line was drawn between the correct Gospels and the heretical ones. The Gospels of Mary, Thomas, and Judas, with their focus on secret knowledge and challenges to leaders like Peter, were a direct threat to building a single, unified church. They had to go. Part 3. The Revelation unmasking the 13th disciple. After following the breadcrumbs from Matthias the substitute to Paul the self-proclaimed apostle and deep into the suppressed Gnostic Gospels, it's time to unmask the 13th disciple. But the answer isn't a single name. It's not one person who was erased. The missing 13th disciple isn't a person at all. It's a symbol. It's the embodiment of every voice that was silenced, every teaching that was suppressed, and every alternative path to God that was declared heresy. When the early church fathers were consolidating power, they needed a simple, clear message and an undeniable line of authority. A story about 12 men, handpicked by Jesus, with Peter as their rock-solid leader, was a powerful foundation. But a story that included a powerful female apostle who received private revelations? Or a disciple who said salvation came from secret wisdom? Or a betrayer who was actually a hero? These stories were dangerously destabilizing. They suggested that authority could come from personal revelation, that women could be spiritual leaders equal to men, and that the established church didn't have a monopoly on truth. Mary Magdalene is the ultimate archetype of this 13th disciple. She was undeniably central to Jesus' ministry. She was the first witness to the resurrection and the first to proclaim it. Her claim to apostleship is arguably stronger than anyone outside the original 12, maybe even Paul. Yet her role was systematically downplayed, her identity smeared, and her own gospel was buried in the sand for centuries. She was erased, not because she was unimportant, but because she was too important. Her authority, based on her direct experience with the risen Christ, was a threat to the rigid top-down structure being built by the bishops of the Roman Church. The same goes for the Gnostic visionaries. Their gospels were suppressed because they offered a type of Christianity that was individual and mystical, one that didn't need priests or bishops. It was a faith of inner awakening, not institutional rules. So the 13th disciple isn't Matthias, who was just a placeholder. It isn't Paul who fought his way into the story. The true 13th disciple is the shadow of early Christianity itself, a collection of lost gospels, forgotten leaders, and suppressed ideas, all personified in the powerful, inconvenient, and ultimately silenced figure of Mary Magdalene, the apostle to the apostles. What do you think? Was suppressing these other stories a necessary evil to keep a young faith from fracturing? Or was it a power grab that robbed history of a richer, more diverse understanding of Jesus' message? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Conclusion. We started with a simple question. What if there was a 13th disciple? We looked at Matthias, chosen by Lot to complete the 12. But we quickly found the story was way bigger. We uncovered the towering figure of Paul, an apostle on his own terms. We dug into the world of the Gnostic Gospels, finding radical new takes on Thomas and Judas. And most profoundly, we rediscovered the vital importance of Mary Magdalene, the apostle to the apostles, whose leadership was sidelined for a more patriarchal structure. The missing 13th disciple isn't one person, but a powerful idea that early Christianity was far more complex and diverse than the official story lets on. The history of the church isn't just about what was remembered, but also about what was deliberately forgotten. The question for us today is, what else is still buried, just waiting to be found? If you enjoyed this deep dive into history's hidden stories, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for more.